Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It is Monday. We're beginning a new book. We're in the book of Esther. I'm here with Pastor Alyssa Bream, Pastor Chris Rexroad. The theme of the book of Esther is preservation. So this is the book of Esther is almost like I don't want to say a Hallmark movie, but it's that good and evil. You know, there's the bad guy, there's the good guy. You know, there's the savior kind of piece to it. You know, all the books of the Bible aren't that like written that clear, but like this would be almost a novelist type book. And obviously it's been made into movies that had some broad appeal for that reason. But Esther is this Jewish woman who becomes a queen in Persia. And she's the heroine of the story, you know, in the end. And it's about preserving God's people, you know, so they are threatened. The Jewish people are being threatened. And as a little background, because I guess we could talk about that today, but they don't know she's a Jew, right? That her history is withheld or hidden. And God used her to be able to save their people. So it was a very courageous act on her part, which we'll talk about later in the week. But today we're looking at Esther chapter 2. And this is the process where she gets chosen to be queen. So in chapter 1, they have a party. And I'm probably going to tell the story wrong, but I think I'm right. The king asks for the queen to come in and dance for him, and she refuses. And at least he wants her to come in and view her beauty. And you know, there are some people who say he wanted her to come in and strip for like these other people. Whether that's not explicit in Scripture, that's what I would say. He does want her to come in and let them look at her. And it's a room full of drunken men, so you can just imagine what that would be like. And she refuses, and so she gets exiled. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't get killed. Like, so.
Well, we don't really know. Like, I mean, I think there's the possibility that she was killed.
Right. But I always assumed she was killed until last year. You know,
so many people die in this book in
right.
such graphic ways.
Yeah. But I assumed she died. But then when I read it last year again, for some reason it registered with me. Maybe she didn't die. Maybe she was just put out in pasture.
It doesn't really say.
Right.
No.
And so he gets lonely. That's how I would describe it. He gets lonely and decides he wants a new queen, somebody to replace. And do you think she's the only one?
The only wife?
Yeah.
No.
So it's weird that he decides, okay, we need somebody to replace Vashti.
Yeah.
But he does, and so they go through this process. So I'll read a little bit of it, and then we'll talk about it, because I have a specific question to talk about today. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendants suggested, let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Now, let me just stop right there and say it appears that he's having second thoughts. That's how I read it. Maybe they're hearing him talk out loud. Maybe I should bring her back. Maybe I should rescind my order. Maybe I should show some mercy. I don't know. And they're like, we need a better idea because, you know.
And what solves all the problems? Beautiful young virgins.
And it says, let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Haggai, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti. This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. So this is the first episode of the Bachelorette, right? Is that it would be the Bachelorette, right?
No, it'd be the
Bachelor.
Bachelor. So it would be the Bachelor.
It'd be one single person
And 30
lots of
women.
Attractive.
Yeah.
I
How
know
many
some
seasons of The Bachelor have you watched, Steve?
that many, 0.
Yeah.
I know
About
some
you, Chris?
people who are
No.
that
Fortunately
doesn't.
for me, when that all started, I was a machinist on second shift and I couldn't watch it. But no.
Well,
I'm not really, yeah. I don't know. That just seems kind of weird to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, it sells on TV and everything, and it's probably, a very carnal thing for a lot of people, but I don't know. That's just exhausting. Yeah, it'd be exhausting. And
I
this is
think
like it on steroids.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like,
I think it makes for great TV. It should, at least from my perspective as a pastor and the way I view relationships and marriage, should go against everything that we think is right.
yeah.
Because by the time, I mean, there's these overnight trips are not, what's the word I'm looking for? They're conjugal visits.
Yeah,
That's what they are.
It's not family friendly.
Right. And, it just seems like this is weird,
Well, because it says that when they leave, they go to the second place that's for his wives. They don't go back to the.
You talking about here? Are we on The Bachelor or the
No,
strip?
no,
Because the
on
same
air.
thing happens. They had
Yeah.
overnight trips. In
Yeah.
fact, they didn't even have a first date. They didn't even have a how
Right.
you doing. It's
They got to spend the night with him, and
Yeah.
whichever one he liked best, whichever one looked best after they woke up the next morning, or I don't know. I
you
don't.
have really bad morning breath. You do not make the cut.
Yeah,
Go
that's
to
right.
the
You're
hair.
out. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so the question that I have today is how do we choose a spouse? What should be the process, the criteria? Alyssa and I had some semi-humorous conversations in the last week. There were a couple of things that led to it about Bible college relationships. That they go there with this intent that I've got to find this wholesome Christian person and get married, and I know what it was. We watched that movie.
That movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Through the eyes of Tammy Faye.
Yeah, that's right. And they were at a Bible college, and just
yeah.
you see them groping in the bed, and then the next day they're married.
Yeah. I mean, at least they were in a bed and not the lobby, which was what happened at my college.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they at Bible college, it's definitely like this almost matchmaking mentality where you have 18 to 22-year-olds who are away from home for the first time, away from a lot of rules, and then you have Tyler's first roommate was bound and determined to find a wife. I think he came more for that than anything. And within about a month, he had chosen the girl that he wanted to be his future wife and had done a multi-step date of like we go to this location and there's this setup here and all this. And she was so freaked out that she never wanted to talk to him again.
You're stalking me.
And then he left college in the middle of the first semester because he got turned down by this girl and was so despondent.
Oh. Well, marriage is encouraged in those circles. And I think there, at least, I did not go to a Christian college. I went to probably an anti-Christian college. It usually makes the party list, not the Christian list. But even some big universities like that have a Christian or evangelical background forbid like cohabitation. Like Liberty they've got 100,000 students,
Mm-hmm.
and they forbid
Right.
cohabitation. Now it happens, okay, but if they find out about it, I guess they're supposed to do something about it. Either they turn a blind eye, but I think it's encouraged, and part of the reason why I think that you would find that at a Christian college is, rightly so, we believe it's better to find somebody of the Christian faith to spend the rest of your life with. Because of the tensions that come, that brings into the relationship if you don't. And, but that can't be the only, well, let me ask you this. Is that the only criteria? And if not, what are some other criteria for choosing a spouse?
some of the stuff that I've taught my boys through my own experience is be very careful, whether it has to do with making permanent life choices, dating, any of that stuff between the ages of 18 and 24. Just because we change so much. You go into the adult world thinking you know who you are and where you're going, and a lot of people make tons of changes by the time that they're 24. So I actually encourage them to just kind of hold off on doing anything like that until you get to a certain age, just because of those changes. But I definitely think that if you are a Christ following person, you definitely want a Christ following spouse. So you should definitely go through that filter first. But then after that, it's aligning other beliefs, goals, and stuff like that. Attraction plays into it, future plans together, and then chemistry between the two people, and that takes time. So rush marriages are not a good idea.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of personality and like um family, like the way your family works. Like how much do you expect to be home with your own family, and like working out some of those issues that you have to think about. I think everything Chris said makes sense. I think uh but also to think that like we in modern America have like figured out the best way to do marriage probably isn't right. Like there are a lot of things that can go wrong when you're choosing your own spouse. I saw that in college where people would get married their sophomore, junior year, and then a year after they graduated from college, they'd be divorced because they just weren't compatible in a lot of different ways, but they felt like they needed to get married really young. Um, and then sometimes it works out. Tyler and I got married between our junior and senior year, and we're still married.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of what makes a marriage work and a relationship work is just the intent to make it work. Like this is the intention we are setting. We are going to work through the problems. We're going to work on things. This isn't going to be something that we call it quits on.
That to me is the number one key to marriage, is the commitment to stick it through no matter what. Because if there is ever an option, eventually you're going to take the other option. If there is ever, like if you ever, like I tell people, don't never, and I mean this, never use the word divorce. Just don't use it, because if you start cracking that door open, eventually you're going to walk through it. You just shouldn't use it. I don't know that age plays as much of a role in it as modern culture thinks it does. Statistically, you can look and see. So the average age now to get married is somewhere around 30. Mm-hmm. It's right around 30 years old. But you can see as that age has gone up, so did the divorce rate. Because by the time, so there are a lot of changes that happen 18 to 24. There's a lot of, you're still being shaped into an adult. But by the time you're 30, there are a lot of things that you have set that are not going to change.
Yeah.
And you suddenly have to make two things one that are hardened. This is who I am and this is who you are, and we're just gonna we're gonna have to figure it out. And there's a lot of headbutting that happens. There's a lot of stress that takes place. So I'm not as opposed to young marriage as I am people who are. I think there are pieces that have some influence on it. Your immediate family has some impact on it. The circle of friends that you have, has a significant impact on it. I mean, I know some people who are in their mid-30s today and are still partying hard. Like, this is woohoo, I'm going to be single the rest of my life. And what?
When Tyler and I were dating, Tyler had a group of friends come up and say that he needed to break up with me.
Oh, wow. Because you were
I don't know. I'm sure. I mean, probably that I was
I don't
very strong-willed.
Okay.
I'm guessing. I don't know.
So were you as strong-willed when you were in high school, to college?
Well, I mean, Tyler and I didn't know each other in high school. Yes.
Okay.
I
All
was
right.
probably worse.
Okay. All right. But maybe some of your ideologies changed over that time?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
There's, yeah.
That's something I usually tell people in like premarital counseling and when talking through different things, struggles in relationship or marriage, is that the person that you marry today, let's say I'm talking to, before I came here, I married a couple 24-year-olds. They'd known each other for a long time. And some of the stuff I told them is like, the person that you marry today isn't going to be the person that you married at age 30 and not at age 40. And that should be expected, because if they still are the person they are today, almost acting like a 24-year-old or into all the same things, there's actually a problem with
That's
that,
right.
because you're supposed to mature and grow together. You will not be the same couple or the same person at age 50, and that's expected.
Yeah, I've heard people say that everybody's been married multiple times, even if they've had the same person in their life, because you go through seasons where your entire relationship looks completely different. You know, our kids are grown, your kids are small. You know, your marriage looks different now than it did before you had children, and it'll look different as they get older, and then when they leave, it'll look different. You know, um, you and I both have had previous marriages, um, and I'll just speak for myself. The number one reason Barbara and I have a good marriage today, and the number one reason we ended up divorced, was a lack of commitment caused the divorce, and commitment has kept us married. That's the truth of it. Like, it's not because it's been easy every day. As a matter of fact, you know, we came with lots of baggage that made it even more complicated, but there was a commitment to work through it. And the fruit of commitment is significant. You know, there are things that, you know, 10 years from now that you'll reap the benefits of, because you were committed today to working through whatever it was. And, you know, those seasons change in everybody's life. And I think we sometimes believe we're marrying somebody and they're never going to change, or we can change them, both of which are bad assumptions. You know, that they're not going to change, or we can change them. And if we're not comfortable with who they are today, it's going to be difficult for us to handle the change that comes later. You mentioned attraction earlier. I'm curious to hear from you two both. How important is attraction in marriage?
The younger you are, the higher it is up. But I think the older you get through experience and everything, attraction is still important, but it's not the number one thing. If we're talking about just physical attraction, there's different levels of attraction, but just overall attraction.
Yeah, I would say that it probably plays a part. I mean, I think that there's elements of a marriage that the attraction is definitely helpful for.
Sure, I would agree. And you know, it's a complicated thing to talk to people about, because you can't convince somebody well, you should like them. I know they're ugly, but you know.
And there's things that can change attraction. I mean, I've said this before in examples that you could see, let's just go just flat out physical beauty. From a guy's perspective, I could see a woman that guys would be like, yeah, she's a 10. But in conversation with her, if she's dropping the F-bomb and she's just talking like a sailor, I mean, she drops down to like a 6 for me. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of things that factor into attraction just beyond the physical.
All right, so let's take physical attraction out of it,
And
you know,
attitude
because
and
I
all
do
kinds of
think
stuff, how they treat
physical
people.
attraction, physical beauty is, I don't want to say it's universal, but there's a fairly general view of what beauty looks like, whether it's male or female. What kind of things detract from beauty? Alyssa, I'll let you go first. Like, so he used cussing like a sailor.
There's a video on TikTok that I saw that's like, I'm not ugly, I'm just poor. And so, like, the ability to keep up with one's appearance, I think, is a lot of attractiveness, I think.
No, 100%. 100%. I believe that's true.
Right.
You know, the clothes that you wear, the way you're able to do your hair, just the things you're exposed to, you know. But you didn't answer my question.
Wait.
So what kind of things detract from physical? Let's just assume they're beautiful physically.
Okay. Smelly.
Smelly. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That would be high on your list. Yeah. Okay. Any others?
What about you?
Number one, cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like I'll be in places and I'll think, wow, she's a pretty lady, and then I was like, oh.
You just dropped 3 notches.
Maybe more. And that's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it could be some of the way I was raised, but like I'm just not a fan of cigarettes in general. That's just me. That would be one. Ignorance would be another. I don't mean less educated, because I think I can gauge when people are educated, uneducated. You know, I think that changes things like your vocabulary and how you express yourself and some of those things. But ignorance just drives me crazy. I don't know. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You're just ignorant. You know? So those are 2.
Yeah.
Y'all have any more?
Such an edifying podcast.
So what would you tell somebody who, I mean, because truthfully, most of the people who are going to listen to this podcast are married.
Right.
There are going to be some who are listening. If we were honest about it, there are going to be some who are listening who regret the decision they've made and are in a horrible relationship.
I don't know if I would have thought this way as much as a 20-year-old as I do now as a 44-year-old, but definitely how they talk about people and how they treat people. If they're talking down on people, if they're constantly a negative person, or they're somebody that you feel that you can't trust them with information, or how they talk about you when you're gone and stuff like that, that's a pretty unattractive thing.
So what would you tell some young person today that's not married? What advice would you give them in the process of looking for a spouse? What would be your number one piece of advice?
Some of the stuff that I usually tell them in premarital counseling, and like I've given to my boys, is the age thing. Just kind of watch that. Usually date somebody for a period of time, and if you happen to go through a major life crisis with them, like let's say they lose a grandparent, looking at people that are probably 18 to 26-year-olds, or lose a job or struggle somehow, some way, you kind of see somebody down kind of a little bit more at their core, because I think we all try to put on our best when we're first dating somebody, but then kind of like the real or the ugly can kind of come out in some of those raw circumstances, and you can kind of see who that person is and how they respond to things. We all get upset, we all have bad days, we all mess up and stuff like that, but basically how do you respond to it, can really kind of tell you who the person really is.
I think find somebody who values the same things you value, and that will guide a lot of life. If you have your personal core values and they don't align with someone else, then
you shouldn't even go. Would you even go on a date with that person?
I grew up in the purity culture. I wouldn't go on a date with somebody until it was somebody who I thought I could marry.
Right.
So,
yeah. Okay.
But
is that okay? I mean, is that the right answer? Like, if this person's not a candidate for a lifelong relationship, should you date them? I don't mean like go out to dinner, but I mean,
my answer would be no.
Okay.
You should date somebody that you would see as a potential person to marry. Now, don't get me wrong, it might be entertaining to go out and spend time, but essentially you're wasting time with that person.
I don't know. My life experience with dating is
Limited.
limited.
Yeah,
So
I get that.
I think
I
think
grew up
that
I grew up in a very similar environment.
right,
I grew up ahead of you, so
right.
yeah.
But you didn't have to kiss dating goodbye.
Well, I don't even know. I couldn't have kissed. It would have been a sin.
I dated people I shouldn't have dated, but I also went through a period of time, probably between like 17 and 22, 16 and 22, where church wasn't a priority, Christ wasn't a priority. I didn't do anything super crazy. I did a lot of stupid stuff, but looking back on some of the people that I dated for short periods of time, it was a waste of time, and I knew it.
Yeah, I don't know that like this is a potential candidate to marry level. That I'm there. You use the word values. I think you should have a list. Like these things are non-negotiable. And if the person asking you out on a date does not meet that, and you know it, you should just not go out with them. Because what happens, in my opinion, is when you go out with somebody that you shouldn't go out with, you put at risk the possibility of somebody that you should be going out with have that happening. And if you have a list of things that are not negotiable, whatever they are, they have to be a believer, and I think that should be on the list. That they have to care about people, whatever your values are. If they don't meet that list, it should be just a no. Like, we can be friends, but no. Could you be wrong? Yeah, I think you can be wrong from time to time, but I do think that I hear people say, "Oh, you're young, you need to date a lot of different people." No, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's required. I'm not a arranged marriage kind of person that you find in scripture. Like, I don't know that we need to go to that, but I will tell you that historically, if you read marital statistics, like people in arranged marriages are not less happy than people who get to choose. Worldwide, statistically, they're not.
Because they got married young and they grew together.
That's right.
And I think that's what happened with Tyler and I.
Right. That has a lot to
married
do
young.
with.
We didn't even have full-time jobs yet.
Right.
And we grew together.
That's right. And in your case, you probably survived in some places that if you didn't work together as a team,
right,
you would have got destroyed. So.
And the reality is that is part of marriage. That you're going to go through circumstances where you have to, like you were saying before, one, you choose not to even bring out the divorce word, and you commit to moving forward with this, but you're going to have those seasons where it's just tough.
So this has been a little longer than normal, but it's a conversation I think we can.
Dating Advice with Steve, coming soon to a podcast near you.
We hope you'll join us tomorrow as we continue our conversation about the book of Esther.